Story 1. Last warning, I never believed in the Mothman until I became his final witness. 3 weeks ago, I was driving Interstate 77 through West Virginia, heading home from a construction job in Charleston. The radio crackled with static as I passed through the hills, and something about the darkness felt different that night. Heavier, like the mountains themselves were holding their breath. That is when I saw the red eyes in my rearview mirror. 2 crimson dots, maybe 8 feet off the ground, keeping perfect pace with my truck at 70 miles per hour. No body visible in the darkness, just those burning orbs floating behind me like demonic headlights. My hand started shaking on the steering wheel as I pressed the gas pedal harder, but the eyes stayed with me, never falling behind, never getting closer. I heard the stories growing up. Every kid in Appalachia knows about Point Pleasant, about what happened in 1966. 13 months of sightings. A creature with wings like a giant bat and eyes that could see through your soul. The Silver Bridge collapse that killed 46 people. My grandfather swore the Mothman tried to warn the town, but nobody listened. The red eyes followed me for 17 miles before vanishing near the Kanawha River. I pulled over at a gas station, still trembling as I filled my tank. The attendant, an old man with hollow cheeks, noticed my pale face. "You've seen him too," he said. "It wasn't to your question. Been more sightings lately. Something big is coming." I tried to laugh it off, but the man, his eyes were deadly serious. He told me about the pattern, how the creature appeared before disasters, how it tried to warn people, but humans were too stubborn to listen. The Silver Bridge, the Chernobyl nuclear accident, the Twin Towers, always the same red eyes in the darkness beforehand, always ignored. "This time feels different though," the old man whispered, glancing around nervously. "More urgent, like it's running out of time to tell us something." I drove straight home to my cabin outside Beckley, deadbolted the door, and tried to forget what I'd seen. But the dreams started immediately. Dark visions of collapsing structures, screaming metal, people running in panic. And always those red eyes, watching, warning, growing more desperate. The next morning brought news that chilled my blood. A major inspection had been scheduled for the Brent Spence Bridge in Cincinnati. Emergency structural concerns. Thousands of commuters use that bridge daily. If it failed during rush hour, I called the inspection team, tried to warn them about increased urgency, but couldn't, to explain how I knew without sounding insane. They thanked me politely and hung up. That afternoon, I drove to Point Pleasant, to the site where the Silver Bridge once stood. The Mothman statue loomed 12 feet tall in the town square, wings spread wide, eyes blank metal instead of burning red. Tourists posed for photos, treating it like a joke, but the locals avoided eye contact with the sculpture, hurrying past with their heads down. I spent hours walking the riverbank where the old bridge used to connect West Virginia to Ohio. As darkness fell, the temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds. The water stopped flowing. Even the insects went silent. Then I heard the wings. The sound was impossible to describe, like leather being torn, but multiplied 1,000 times, like a helicopter made of nightmares. I looked up and saw it perched on a dead tree 50 yards away. 8 feet tall, humanoid but wrong, with wings that blocked out the stars. Its eyes weren't just red anymore. They pulsed like a heartbeat, desperate and urgent. It wasn't trying to scare me. It was trying to communicate. In that moment, I understood. The Mothman wasn't a monster. It was a guardian, condemned to witness humanity, its disasters, and powerless to prevent them. It could only warn, and we never listened until it was too late. The creature lifted one clawed finger and pointed east, toward Interstate 64. Then it spread those massive wings and vanished into the night sky with a sound like thunder. I drove east all night, following some instinct I couldn't explain. At dawn, I reached the Kanawha River Bridge near Charleston. Construction crews were already there, working frantically on emergency repairs. One of the workers told me they discovered critical stress fractures just hours earlier. If they hadn't caught it when they did, the morning rush hour would have been catastrophic. But here, it's what haunts me most. As I watched the repairs, I noticed something carved into the concrete barrier. Fresh scratches that looked almost like symbols, like someone or something had been trying to leave a message. The scratches spelled out a date. 3 days from now. I've been driving the highways ever since, looking for more signs, more warnings. The red eyes appear in my mirrors every night, but they fainter now, like the creature is growing weaker with each attempt to communicate. Yesterday, I found another marking, this time on an overpass near Huntington. The same date, carved deep into the metal. And now I understand why the Mothman has been growing more desperate. It's not warning us about one disaster anymore. It's trying to tell us about all of them. A chain reaction that starts in 3 days. Something so catastrophic that even a creature from beyond our world is terrified. I'm recording this because I might not survive what is coming. The Mothman chose me as its final messenger, and I refuse to let its warnings go unheard. If you re-listening to this, check the bridges in your area. Look for fresh scratches, unexplained stress fractures, anything unusual. The red eyes are fading from my mirrors. I think the creature is dying, exhausted from trying to save a species too arrogant to believe in guardian angels with wings. Tomorrow is the date, and I'm starting to see the red eyes even when I'm not driving. They're everywhere now. Story 2. Wendigo at the Walmart parking lot. The body cam footage cuts to static at exactly 3:47 a.m. Before the screen goes dark, investigators can make out towering shadows with branching antlers stretching across frozen concrete. The audio continues for 7 more seconds. Wet scraping sounds, then a screech that makes grown men cover their ears. Marcus Rivera had been working overnight security at the Boone Walmart for 3 months when he disappeared. His shift started at midnight. His body cam recorded everything until those final moments in the parking lot behind the loading dock. But Detective Lisa Park was watching the footage now, frame by frame, trying to understand what happened to Marcus. The timestamp showed he had been investigating reports of someone tampering with the refrigerated trucks. Night shift workers claimed they heard scratching sounds coming from the meat delivery trailers. Lisa hit rewind, started from the beginning. The body cam showed Marcus walking through the empty store aisles at 12:15 a.m. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. His footsteps echoed against polished floors. Everything looked normal, peaceful, even. Just another quiet night in small-town North Carolina. The first sign of trouble came at 1:23 a.m. Marcus was checking the employee break room when his radio crackled with static. Through the interference, a voice spoke. Thin, desperate, barely human. Help me. Marcus keyed his radio. This is Rivera. Who was that on Channel 7? No response. Just static. He tried again. Dispatch. Did you copy that transmission? Copy what? Rivera. Channel. It's been quiet all night. Marcus frowned at the radio. Lisa could see his confusion on the body cam footage. He had clearly heard something, but dispatch heard nothing. Over the next hour, Marcus completed his rounds without incident. The store was empty except for the overnight crew stocking shelves in grocery. Everything appeared normal, until he reached the back loading dock at 2:45 a.m. The refrigerated trucks sat in neat rows behind the building, white trailers that kept frozen goods cold during transport. Marcus approached the first truck in line. His flashlight beam cut through the mountain darkness. That was when he heard the scratching. Soft at first, like fingernails dragging across metal, coming from inside the trailer. Marcus circled the truck slowly. The scratching grew louder, more frantic, like something trapped inside was trying to claw its way out. He checked the trailer doors, locked tight with heavy-duty seals. No way anything could get inside. But the scratching continued. Marcus keyed his radio. Rivera to dispatch. Need a manager out to the loading dock. Possible issue with refrigerated Unit 7. Copy that. Rivera. Manager, is on the way. The scratching stopped. Marcus waited by the truck for 20 minutes. When the night manager arrived, they unlocked the trailer together. Inside, pallets of frozen meat sat exactly where they should be. Nothing disturbed. No sign of any animal or intruder. But Lisa noticed something on the body cam footage that Marcus missed. As they opened the trailer doors, a shadow moved across the truck, this white interior. Too tall to be human, too thin to be natural. The shadow had what looked like antlers. Marcus finished his inspection and locked the trailer. The night manager returned to the store. Everything seemed fine. But at 3:15 a.m., Marcus heard screaming from the parking lot. He ran toward the sound, body cam bouncing with each step. The screaming came from near the grocery pickup area. High-pitched, terrified, definitely human. Marcus rounded the corner of the building and stopped dead. His flashlight beam illuminated the asphalt where someone had been standing moments before. But now the parking lot was empty, except for the blood. Dark stains spread across the concrete in a pattern that made no sense. Not splashed or pooled like normal bleeding. Instead, the blood seemed to have been licked from the ground in long, deliberate strokes. Marcus called for backup immediately. Rivera to all units. Possible assault in progress at Walmart loading area. Need immediate response. His radio answered with static. Then that same thin, desperate voice from earlier. Help me. But this time, Marcus recognized the voice. It belonged to Danny Morrison, another security guard who worked the weekend shift. Danny was supposed to be home in bed. Danny? Danny? Is that you? Where are you? The voice came back clearer now. Loading dock. Behind the trucks. Hurry! Marcus ran toward the loading dock. His body cam showed him weaving between parked trailers, following Danny's voice on the radio. Danny? Keep talking. I can. I see you. Here. Over here. Behind the last truck. Marcus reached the end of the truck line. His flashlight swept the area behind the final trailer. Nothing. Empty asphalt stretching toward the tree line. Danny, I see you. His radio crackled. Look up. Marcus raised his flashlight toward the top of the trailer. The beam illuminated something that made him stumble backward. Danny Morrison hung suspended 15 feet above the truck, pinned against the trailer's roof by something Lisa could not quite make out on the grainy body cam footage. Danny, his arms and legs dangled at impossible angles. His head rolled to one side, but his lips were moving, speaking into a radio clip to his shirt. Help me, Danny, his voice said through Marcus' radio. Even though Danny was clearly dead, Marcus dropped his flashlight. The beam spun across the asphalt as the light rolled away. For a moment, everything went dark except for the body cam's night vision. That was when Lisa saw it clearly. A figure stood behind Marcus. 7 feet tall, impossibly thin, skeletal arms that reached nearly to the ground. Its head was crowned with massive antlers that spread like dead tree branches. And it was licking the frozen trailer door with a tongue that stretched 3 feet from its mouth. Marcus spun around, came face to face with the creature. His scream cut through the mountain air like breaking glass. The thing looked down at him with eyes that glowed pale yellow in the body cam's infrared. Its face was human once, but stretched and corrupted by endless hunger. Skin pulled tight over jutting bones. Teeth filed to needle points. A Wendigo. Lisa had heard the old Appalachian stories. Native legends about cannibals who consumed human flesh until they became something else. Something always hungry. Something that could never be satisfied. Marcus ran. The body cam footage showed him sprinting across the parking lot, weaving between cars, desperate to reach the store. Behind him, the Wendigo followed with long, loping strides. Each step covered impossible distance. Marcus reached the employee entrance and yanked on the door. Locked, he pounded on the glass. Let me in! Let me in! Through the door, this window, Lisa could see the overnight crew inside. They looked up at the commotion but made no move to help. They stood perfectly still among the store aisles, staring at Marcus with blank expressions. Marcus pulled out his keys. His hands shook so badly he dropped them twice before getting the door unlocked. He burst into the store and slammed the door behind him. The Wendigo hit the glass a second later. The impact spider webbed the entire door, but the glass held. Marcus backed away from the entrance, breathing hard. The overnight crew watched him without speaking. Their eyes reflected the store's fluorescent lights like mirrors. Call the police, Marcus gasped. There is something outside. Something killed Danny. None of the workers moved. They just stared at him with those reflective eyes. Marcus pulled out his cell phone. No signal. He tried the store's landline. Dead. The Wendigo appeared at another entrance. Then another. The creature moved around the building's perimeter, testing every door and window, looking for a way inside. But it could not enter. Some invisible barrier kept it outside. Lisa wondered if it was the building's fluorescent lights, or the constant flow of electricity, or something else entirely. Marcus spent the next 30 minutes barricaded inside while the Wendigo prowled the parking lot. Sometimes it disappeared into the darkness between the trailers. Sometimes it stood perfectly still near the tree line, watching the store with those pale yellow eyes. The overnight workers never spoke, never moved. They just stood among the aisles like mannequins, their eyes tracking Marcus wherever he went. At 3:40 a.m., Marcus' radio came to life again. Rivera, this is dispatch. Everything okay out there? Marcus grabbed the radio eagerly. Dispatch? Thank God. I need immediate backup at the Walmart. Officer down. Suspect on scene. Copy that. Rivera, units are en route. What? It's year 20. Inside the store. Suspect is outside in the parking lot. White male, approximately 7 feet tall, armed and extremely dangerous. Rivera, we're not showing any units at your location. Are you sure you re at the Walmart? Marcus looked around the store. The fluorescent lights, the endless aisles, the silent workers with their reflective eyes. Yes, I'm at the Walmart on Highway 105. Where are the backup units? Rivera, the Walmart on Highway 105 has been closed for 3 years. Building. It's been empty since the new supercenter opened. Marcus, his blood went cold. He looked around the store again. Now he could see what he had missed before. Dust on the shelves, cobwebs in the corners. The fluorescent lights flickered and buzzed because half of them were burned out. The overnight workers were not workers at all. They were mannequins left behind when the store closed. Their reflective eyes were just plastic and paint. Marcus had been alone in an abandoned building. But if the store was closed, how did he get inside? How were the lights still working? How did everything look so normal when he first arrived? His radio crackled again. Rivera, we need you to exit the building and wait for backup in the parking lot. Marcus looked toward the entrance. Through the cracked glass door, he could see the Wendigo waiting. Perfectly still, patient as death. I can to go outside. The suspect is right there. What suspect? Rivera, we're not showing anyone on the security cameras. Security cameras? The building is equipped with motion sensors and cameras. They show you alone inside the store. No one else on the property. Marcus walked to one of the windows and peered out. The parking lot looked different now. Broken asphalt, weeds growing through cracks, shopping cart corrals twisted and rusted. This was not the Walmart where he worked. This was the old Walmart, the abandoned one. But how did he get here? His shift started at the active store across town. He remembered walking through clean aisles, checking modern refrigeration units, talking to real employees. Unless he remembered wrong, unless his mind was playing tricks on him, unless something had been luring him here all along. Marcus checked his body cam settings. The timestamp showed 3:42 a.m. He had been recording for nearly 4 hours. But when he tried to review the earlier footage, the files were corrupted. Nothing but static and distorted images, except for one clear frame at the very beginning. A sign in the store window. Thanks for shopping with us. This location permanently closed. The sign had been there the entire time. He just had not seen it. Or something had not let him see it. Marcus, his radio crackled one last time. Rivera, backup is outside. Exit the building immediately. Through the window, Marcus could see police cars in the parking lot. Red and blue lights flashing. Officers with flashlights approaching the entrance. But the Wendigo was still there too, standing among the police cars like it belonged. None of the officers seemed to notice it. Marcus walked toward the entrance. His hand reached for the door handle. The body cam footage showed the Wendigo turning to look directly at the camera. Those pale yellow eyes staring into the lens. Into Marcus' eyes. Into Lisa's eyes as she watched the recording. The creature's mouth opened wide, revealing rows of needle teeth. Its impossibly long tongue slithered out and licked the glass door. Then the body cam cut to static. Lisa sat in the evidence room, staring at the blank screen. She had watched the footage a dozen times now. Each viewing revealed new details, new impossibilities. The official report stated that Marcus Rivera suffered a psychotic break while on duty. He was found the next morning in the parking lot of the abandoned Walmart, catatonic and unresponsive. He claimed to have no memory of the night's events. But Lisa had studied the body cam footage. She had seen things that could not be explained by mental illness or hallucination. The blood on the asphalt was real. Lab tests confirmed it belonged to Danny Morrison. But Danny Morrison was alive and well, working his weekend shift at the new Walmart. He had no injuries, no memory of being at the old store. The scratch marks on the refrigerated trailers were real too. Deep gouges in the metal that looked like claw marks. But the trailers had been sitting empty in that parking lot for 3 years. Most disturbing of all were the other body cam files Lisa found in the evidence system. Files from other security guards who had worked at the abandoned Walmart. Files dating back to when the store first closed. Every guard reported the same things. Scratching sounds from empty trailers. Voices on the radio calling for help. Overnight workers who turned out to be mannequins. And in every case, the body cam footage ended the same way. Static at exactly 3:47 a.m. 7 seconds of wet scraping sounds. Then that bone-chilling screech. Lisa realized she was looking at a pattern that stretched back 3 years. The Wendigo had been hunting at that location since the store closed, luring security guards and night workers with illusions of normalcy. But why there? What drew the creature to that specific spot? She pulled up property records for the abandoned Walmart. The store was built in 1987 on land that had once been forest. Before that, it was Cherokee hunting grounds. The local tribe had used the area for winter camps. Lisa found historical records mentioning strange disappearances in those woods. Hunters who went missing during harsh winters. Search parties that found evidence of cannibalism in remote cabins. The old Cherokee stories spoke of Wendigo spirits that awakened during times of extreme hunger and desperation. Spirits that could create illusions to draw victims into their domain. When the Walmart was built, construction crews reported finding human bones beneath the foundation. Old bones. Some showed signs of being gnawed by human teeth. The store operated normally for 25 years. But after it closed and the building stood empty, the Wendigo spirit awakened. Perhaps drawn by the cold storage areas that reminded it of winter hunting grounds. Perhaps attracted to a place where food was once abundant but now stood empty. The creature began luring people to the abandoned store. Security guards mostly, since they were the only ones who had reason to be there at night. It created elaborate illusions to make them believe the store was still operational. Still safe, then it hunted them. Lisa closed the case files and leaned back in her chair. Marcus Rivera was in psychiatric care at the state hospital. He would probably never work security again. Danny Morrison had quit his job and moved to Florida. He claimed North Carolina was too cold for him now. But the Wendigo was still out there. Still hunting. Still waiting for the next person to walk into its trap. Lisa's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Help me." She stared at the screen. The message had no timestamp. No originating phone number. Just those two words. Her radio crackled to life even though it was turned off. Loading dock. Behind the trucks. "Hurry." Lisa grabbed her keys and coat. She knew she should not go. She knew it was a trap. But somewhere in her mind, she could hear Marcus screaming. She could see Danny Morrison hanging impossibly high above the trailers. And she could feel those pale yellow eyes watching her through the evidence room window. Lisa drove through Boone toward the abandoned Walmart. She told herself she was just going to check the perimeter, make sure the building was still secure. She was not going inside. But as she turned into the parking lot, the store looked different. Lights were on inside. Cars filled the parking spaces. The building looked new and clean and welcoming. Lisa parked near the entrance. Through the glass doors, she could see employees working the night shift. Stocking shelves, running cash registers. Everything looked perfectly normal. She checked her phone. The text message was gone. No record of it in her message history. Her radio was silent now. No voices calling for help. Maybe she had imagined it all. Maybe the stress of working too many cases was getting to her. Lisa walked toward the store entrance. The automatic doors slid open with a cheerful chime. Cool air conditioning washed over her face. "Welcome to Walmart," said a pleasant voice over the intercom. "We open 24 hours for your convenience." Lisa stepped inside and heard the doors close behind her. The Wendigo watched from the shadows between the refrigerated trailers. Patient as winter, hungry as death. Soon there would be fresh meat for the endless feast. Story 3. Church of the Hollow Children Maya. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness of the abandoned church like a sword through black velvet. Dust motes danced in the light like tiny ghosts celebrating their freedom from decades of silence and decay. The air tasted of mold and forgotten prayers, of wood rot and something else. Something sweet and cloying that reminded her of funeral flowers left too long in the sun. The pews stretched before her in perfect rows, filled with congregation members who would never sing another hymn, who would never bow their heads in prayer or pass collection plates filled with crumpled dollar bills and pocket change. Corn-husk dolls, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, sitting upright like they were waiting for Sunday service to begin, like they had been waiting for decades. Each one perfectly crafted with the kind of attention to detail that spoke of love and care and endless hours of careful work. Each one wearing clothes that looked like they came from different decades. Depression-era dresses with hand-sewn buttons and careful patches. World War II uniforms complete with brass buttons and ribbon medals that gleamed in her flashlight beam. Bell-bottom jeans from the 70s with peace sign patches and tie-dyed shirts that had faded to pastel memories. Modern hoodies and sneakers that looked fresh from the mall. Fresh enough to still smell like the stores where they had been bought. Maya had explored dozens of abandoned places across Kentucky and Tennessee. Forgotten hospitals where tuberculosis patients died screaming for air that would never fill their collapsed lungs. Empty shopping malls where mannequins stood guard over stores that would never open again. Factories where machines rusted in silence and ghosts of workers still punched phantom time clocks. But nothing had prepared her for this. Nothing had prepared her for the Cumberland Gap Church of the Risen Lord. Nothing had prepared her for the feeling that she was not exploring an abandoned building but intruding on something that was very much alive and waiting. The church had been abandoned since 1987, according to her research. 3 months of digging through newspaper archives and county records. Following rumors and whispered stories from locals who would only talk after several drinks and sworn promises never to mention their names. Some kind of scandal with the pastor, a man named Jeremiah Hollow who preached about sacrifice and the holy innocence of children. Missing children, 23 of them over the course of 6 months. All between the ages of 6 and 10. All from families that attended services regularly. All vanished without a trace except for their clothes found folded neatly on their beds like they had simply decided to walk naked into the night. Accusations that were never proven. Evidence that disappeared from police lockup. Witnesses who suddenly developed amnesia or moved away in the middle of the night. The case went cold faster than a Kentucky winter, and Pastor Hollow vanished like smoke on a windy day. The congregation scattered to other churches after the last child disappeared. The building was left to rot in the Appalachian wilderness where vines and time consumed everything that humans abandoned. Where nature reclaimed what civilization could not hold. But someone had been here recently. The dolls were clean, no dust on their cornhusk faces. No cobwebs stretched between their outstretched arms. Their button eyes gleamed in her flashlight beam like they were watching her every move. Like they were evaluating whether she belonged here or whether she was just another intruder who needed to be dealt with. Maya raised her camera with hands that shook slightly from excitement and something else. Something that felt like fear but tasted like anticipation. The urban exploration community would go absolutely crazy for this footage. Her YouTube channel had been stuck at 15,000 subscribers for months. This discovery would change everything. Thousands of views, maybe hundreds of thousands. Her subscriber count would explode overnight like a viral video of a cat playing piano. She could finally quit her day job at Mutual Assurance, where she processed insurance claims for people whose lives had been destroyed by floods and fires and medical emergencies they could never afford. She could explore full-time, travel the country, document the forgotten places where America's ghosts lived and waited. The first photo flash illuminated the entire sanctuary like artificial lightning. Gothic windows that had lost their stained glass years ago. Broken frames that let in mountain wind and autumn rain. A pulpit where sermons about salvation and damnation once echoed off stone walls built to last centuries. And the dolls, so many dolls it hurt to count them all. Row after row of corn husk faces staring at nothing and everything. In the photograph on her camera screen, something was wrong. The dolls in the front row had turned their heads, all of them looking directly at her with those button eyes that reflected the flash like tiny mirrors. But when she looked up from the camera, they faced forward again. Sitting exactly as they had been when she first entered, hands folded in their laps like children who had been taught proper manners. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs like a caged bird desperate to escape. Just tricks of light and shadow. Old churches played games with your mind. Made you see things that were not there and hear whispers in the wind that sounded almost like voices calling your name from places you could never find. She had experienced this before in other abandoned buildings. The mind filled in blanks that should not exist. Created movement where there was only stillness. Imagined sounds where there was only silence. It was part of the appeal. Part of what drew urban explorers to places where reality bent at the edges and anything seemed possible. She moved deeper into the sanctuary. Her footsteps echoed off the walls like gunshots in a canyon. The floorboards creaked under her weight with sounds that had not been heard for decades. Some of them were soft with rot. Others felt solid enough to support a full congregation singing hymns that would wake the dead. The altar was carved from local stone, Kentucky limestone that had been quarried somewhere in these mountains over a century ago by men who understood that some structures needed to last longer than human memory. Dark stains covered its surface like abstract art painted in rust and time. Old stains that had soaked deep into the porous rock over years of use. They looked like iron dissolved in water and spread across the stone in patterns that almost resembled letters. Almost resembled words written in a language that predated English. Almost resembled names. Maya knelt beside the altar. Her flashlight revealed more details in the stains. Not random patterns, deliberate marks. Words carved into the stone and filled with something dark and permanent. Names. Dozens of names carved into the altar like a memorial. Or a menu. Timothy Walsh. Age 8 gone home 1987 Susan Martinez. Age 6 gone home 1987 Billy Crawford. Age 10 gone home 1987 Jennifer Hayes. Age 7 gone home 1987, the list went on. 23 names total, all children, all the same year, all with the same phrase. Gone home, like they had graduated to somewhere better, somewhere that required leaving everything behind. Maya photographed each name, her flash reflected off the dark stains that filled the carved letters. The stains gleamed wet in the light even though they had to be decades old. even though nothing stayed wet that long in the dry air of an abandoned church. Behind her, something rustled, like paper, like dry leaves, like corn husks moving against each other. She spun around. The dolls sat exactly as before, facing the pulpit with their button eyes and stitched smiles. But the sound continued, a whisper of movement that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Maya checked her watch. 11:45. She had been here for 2 hours already. Time moved different in places like this. Slower, thicker, like honey dripping from a broken jar. The battery indicator on her camera blinked red. Almost dead. Her phone had died completely an hour ago. Something about these old churches. They drained electronics faster than they should, as if the buildings were hungry for the energy that powered modern devices. She needed to leave soon. The mountain roads back to town were dangerous enough in daylight. At night, they became death traps where one wrong turn could send you tumbling into a ravine that no one would ever find. But first, she wanted one more shot. The perfect photograph that would capture the eerie beauty of this place. The image that would make her urban exploration career. Maya climbed the steps to the pulpit. The wood was solid oak, hand-carved by craftsmen who took pride in their work, who built things to last centuries instead of decades. The podium where the pastor once preached about salvation was covered in dust thick as velvet. But underneath the dust, something waited. A book, large and leather-bound with brass clasps that had turned green with age. The cover was embossed with gold letters that spelled out words in Latin that Maya could not read. She opened the book carefully. The pages were parchment, real animal skin stretched thin and treated with chemicals that made it last forever. The text was handwritten in ink that looked suspiciously like the stains on the altar. Dark red-brown letters that formed words in English this time. A hymnal, but not like any hymnal she had ever seen. The songs had titles like Lullaby for the Lost and Come Home Children and the Feast of Innocence. The lyrics were wrong, twisted versions of songs she recognized from her childhood church days with her grandmother. Maya flipped through the pages. More songs about children, about sacrifice, about feeding something that lived in the spaces between prayers. Each page made her stomach turn, made her skin crawl with invisible insects that left no marks but plenty of fear. Near the back of the book, the pages changed. No more songs. Instead, she found photographs. Old black and white images pasted directly onto the parchment. Children from different eras, different decades, all smiling at the camera like they were posing for school pictures. The same children whose names were carved into the altar. Maya's hands shook as she turned the pages. More photographs, more children. The dates written in that same red-brown ink showed they went back over a century. Generations of missing kids who had somehow ended up in this book. In this church. In whatever happened here when the moon was dark and the congregation gathered for services that had nothing to do with salvation. The last page was different. Recent. A color photograph printed on modern photo paper and glued to the ancient parchment with something that looked like dried blood. A young woman with short black hair and dark eyes, wearing jeans and a hiking jacket, carrying a camera and flashlight, standing outside the church with an excited smile on her face. Maya stared at her own photograph, taken from outside, taken tonight, before she had entered the building. But there had been no one else here. No one to take the picture. No one to paste it into the book while she was exploring the sanctuary. Her watch chimed midnight. The dolls began to whisper. Not words at first, just sounds, rustling and shifting and the soft susurrus of corn husks rubbing together. Then voices. Children. Yes, voices, high and sweet and wrong. They spoke names. The names carved into the altar. The names from the photographs. But they spoke them like prayers. Like incantations. Like summoning spells that reached across decades of silence to call the lost children home. Maya ran for the door. But the door was gone. Where the entrance had been, she found only stone wall. Solid limestone blocks fitted together without mortar. No way in, no way out. Just her and the whispering dolls and whatever had been waiting in this place for someone new to add to the collection. The hymnal in her hands grew warm. The pages fluttered open to a song she did not recognize. Words appeared on the blank page as she watched, written in that familiar red-brown ink that smelled like copper pennies and old fears. Maya's song. Age 29, come home 2024, she tried to drop the book. But her hands would not let go. The leather cover had somehow fused to her palms. The pages wrapped around her fingers like bandages, like burial shrouds, like the loving embrace of something that had been lonely for far too long. The dolls stood up in their pews, all of them moving at once, all of them turning to face her with their button eyes and stitched smiles. They began to walk, slow and deliberate. Their corn-husk bodies rustling like autumn leaves in a graveyard wind. Maya screamed, but no sound came out. The hymnal had grown larger, or she had grown smaller. The pages surrounded her now, wrapping around her body like a cocoon, like a casket made of words and music and the dreams of lost children who had been waiting so long for someone to sing their songs. The last thing she saw before the pages covered her eyes was the pulpit. A new doll sat behind it now, wearing her clothes, carrying her camera, smiling that same stitched smile as all the others. Maya, S. doll, ready to whisper her name when the next explorer came looking for abandoned places where urban legends came to life. 3 days later, Park Ranger Tom Hutchins found Maya's car in the Cumberland Gap parking area. Keys in the ignition, purse on the passenger seat, camera bag in the back, but no sign of Maya herself. The search lasted 2 weeks. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers from 3 counties. They found nothing, no trace, no clues, no evidence that Maya Chen had ever existed except for the social media posts about exploring an abandoned church that no one could seem to locate. Tom filed his report. Another missing person case that would never be solved. Another name for the files that gathered dust in basement storage rooms where bureaucracy went to die. But sometimes, on still nights when the mountain fog rolled through Cumberland Gap, Tom could swear he heard singing. Children, this voices carrying hymns on the wind. Songs about coming home. Songs about joining the congregation of the lost. And sometimes, if he listened very carefully, he could hear a new voice among the others. A woman's voice, singing Maya's song in perfect harmony with the hollow children who would never truly rest. Story 4. Bone Lady, Miss Nursery. The child, as scream pierced the West Virginia morning like a breaking bottle. Deputy Ray Collins found 6-year-old Emma Harding 3 miles from where she disappeared 5 days ago. She sat in a creek bed, catatonic and shivering. Her blonde hair was woven with tiny finger bones that clicked together when she moved her head. Ray had been searching these hollows since Tuesday. Emma vanished from her backyard in Beckley while her mother hung laundry. No ransom demands, no witnesses, just gone. But here she was, alive, unharmed except for the bones. Ray approached slowly, hands raised. Emma stared past him with glassy eyes. Her lips moved silently, forming words he could not hear. Emma, honey, I'm Deputy Collins. I'm here to take you home. Emma, his head turned toward him with mechanical precision. The bones in her hair chimed like wind chimes. Mama, his bones are pretty, she whispered. Mama weaves them while we sleep. Ray felt ice form in his stomach. Emma, his mother, was alive and well, waiting frantically at the sheriff's station. This was not her biological mother the child was talking about. Who wove the bones? Emma. Mama did. Mama takes care of all her children. She keeps us safe. Ray radioed for backup and medical transport. But as he waited with Emma, she began humming a lullaby he had never heard before. The melody was old, ancient. It seemed to seep from the hollows themselves. The bones in her hair clicked in rhythm with the tune. That was 3 days ago. Now Ray sat in his truck outside the Harding house, watching through the kitchen window as Emma ate breakfast with her real mother. The bones were gone, cut from her hair by the hospital staff. But Emma still hummed that lullaby, still spoke about Mama who lived in the deep holler. Child Services said she was traumatized but physically unharmed. No signs of abuse, no malnutrition. In fact, Emma appeared healthier than when she disappeared. Her skin glowed, her eyes sparkled with unnatural brightness. But she would not stop talking about her other mother. Ray's radio crackled. Collins, we got another one. His blood went cold. Where? Bluefield, 8-year-old boy named Tyler Chan. Parents say he's been missing since yesterday morning. Ray started his engine. Bluefield was 40 miles south, deep in coal country where the hollows ran darker and the mountains pressed closer together. He arrived at the Chen house to find the same scene he had witnessed dozens of times before. Frantic parents, neighbors searching with flashlights, state police coordinating search grids. But Ray was thinking about Emma's bones, about the lullaby, about stories his grandmother used to tell when he was Tyler and Sage. Stories about the Bone Lady. According to mountain folklore, she lived in the deepest hollows where sunlight never touched the forest floor. She appeared as a skeletal woman draped in tattered cloth, her fingers worn to bone from digging graves. The Bone Lady stole children to replace the ones she lost. Her own children, dead for generations but still needing care. Ray had dismissed the stories as typical Appalachian superstition. Every mountain community had its boogeyman, the beast of Braxton County, the Grafton Monster, Point Pleasant, Miss Mothman. But Emma's bones were real, physical evidence of something impossible. Ray joined the search teams combing the hills around Bluefield. They found Tyler Chen 12 hours later in a cave system 30 miles from his home. The boy sat in perfect silence, unharmed except for the bird bones braided into his black hair. Ray approached the cave entrance carefully. Inside, Tyler hummed the same lullaby Emma had hummed, the same ancient melody that seemed to rise from the earth itself. "Tyler, can you hear me, son?" The boy looked up with eyes that sparkled with unnatural light. "Deputy Ray, Mama said you would come. She wants to meet you." "Which Mama?" "Tyler, the one who takes care of children, the one with the pretty bones." Ray felt the temperature drop 10 degrees. His breath misted in the suddenly cold air. "Where is this Mama?" "Tyler." The boy pointed deeper into the cave system, into darkness that seemed to swallow Ray, his flashlight beam. "She is waiting. She has been waiting a long time." Against every instinct screaming in his head, Ray followed Tyler into the cave. The tunnel sloped downward through limestone formations that looked like grasping fingers. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. The sound echoed like footsteps. Tyler walked ahead without hesitation, navigating the underground maze like he had been here before. The bones in his hair clicked softly with each step. "How do you know the way, Tyler?" "Mama taught me. She teaches all her children. We play games in the dark." The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber. Ray's flashlight revealed smooth stone walls covered in something that made his stomach lurch. Drawings, hundreds of them, stick figures of children holding hands with a tall, thin woman, all drawn in what looked like dried blood. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the ages written beneath each drawing. Dates going back decades, some going back over a century. "She has been collecting children for a very long time," Tyler said matter-of-factly. "She gets lonely when they grow up and leave." Ray studied the drawings more closely. Some of the children's names were familiar. Missing persons cases from his files. Cold cases going back to when his grandfather worked these hills. "Tyler, how long have you been here?" "Since yesterday, or maybe longer." "Time moves funny in the deep holler." Ray checked his watch. According to the timestamp, Tyler had been missing for exactly 18 hours. But the boy seemed to know this cave system intimately. "Has Mama shown you other children?" Tyler nodded eagerly. "Oh yes, Emma was here before me. And Sarah, and Michael, and lots of others. They all lived here until they got too big." "What happens when they get too big?" "They go home. But they remember Mama. They dream about her. Sometimes they come back to visit." Ray's radio crackled with static. Through the interference, he heard voices. Children's voices, all humming the same lullaby. "Tyler, we need to leave. Right now, but Mama wants to meet you. She likes people who help children." The temperature dropped another 10 degrees. Ray's flashlight beam began to flicker and dim. From somewhere deep in the cave system came the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. Ray grabbed Tyler's hand. We're leaving now." But Tyler would not move. He stood perfectly still, listening to those approaching footsteps. "She is coming," he whispered with delight. "Mama is coming to say hello." Ray's flashlight died completely. The cave plunged into absolute darkness. In the blackness, Ray heard the footsteps getting closer. Each step echoed like breaking bones, like snapping twigs, like the sound dead things make when they try to walk. "Tyler, can you find the way out in the dark?" No response. Ray reached out blindly, searching for the boy. His hands found empty air. "Tyler." Silence. Ray pulled out his phone and activated the flashlight app. The weak LED beam revealed the cave chamber exactly as before. The bloody drawings on the walls. The dates going back generations. But Tyler was gone. Ray spun in a circle, searching with his phone light. No sign of the boy anywhere. It was as if Tyler had vanished into the stone itself. The footsteps stopped. Ray held his breath, listening. The cave had gone completely silent. No dripping water, no echoing sounds. Even the air seemed to have stopped moving. Then he heard breathing that was not his own. Slow, labored, like air passing through damaged lungs. The breathing came from directly behind him. Ray turned around. His phone light illuminated a figure that should not exist. 7 feet tall and impossibly thin, draped in rotting cloth that might have once been a dress. Her face was human once, but time and darkness had worn it down to bone and sinew. Her fingers were indeed worn to bone from decades of digging. They dripped with something dark and wet. The bone lady smiled at him with teeth like broken glass. "You found my children," she said in a voice like grinding stone. "You brought them home to me." Ray stumbled backward. His phone slipped from his trembling hands and shattered against the cave floor. Darkness swallowed them both. "Where is Tyler?" "Safe, fed, loved. All my children are loved." Ray could hear her moving in the darkness, circling him like a predator. "I have been waiting for you, Deputy Collins. The children speak of you often. They trust you. Let Tyler go. Take me instead. Laughter echoed through the cave. Laughter like breaking bones. Oh, but I cannot take you. You are too old. Too set in your ways. Children are different. Children adapt. Children forget their old lives and embrace their new family. Ray felt cold fingers touch his face. Bone fingers that traced his jawline with impossible gentleness. But you can help me find more children. You know where they live, where they play, where they feel safe. I will never help you. No, even to save the ones I already have. Lights flickered in the darkness. Candles appeared along the cave walls as if lit by invisible hands. The weak flame revealed Tyler standing 20 feet away. The boy smiled and waved at Ray. But Tyler was not alone. Dozens of children stood in the cave chamber. Some Ray recognized from missing persons files. Others were too young to be from recent cases. They wore clothes from different eras, different decades, different centuries. All of them had bones woven into their hair. My family grows larger each year, the bone lady said proudly. But children are fragile things. They break, they fade, they must be replaced regularly. Ray understood the horrible truth. The children were not just kidnapped. They were being consumed somehow, used up. Their life force drained until nothing remained but empty shells that needed constant replenishment. The bones, Ray whispered. Ah, you noticed. Each child carries a piece of those who came before. A connection to the eternal family. The bones ensure they never truly leave me. Tyler walked toward Ray with that same mechanical precision Emma had shown. His eyes sparkled with unnatural light. Deputy Ray, will you help Mama find more friends for us? Ray looked at the dozens of stolen children surrounding him. Some he recognized from cases going back years, others from cases going back decades. All of them trapped in this underground nightmare, slowly being drained of whatever made them human. If I help you, will you let them go? The bone lady laughed again. Let them go? But they are my children now. They belong to me, just as Tyler belongs to me, just as Emma still belongs to me, even though she sleeps in another house. Ray thought about Emma, safe at home with her real mother, but still humming that ancient lullaby. Still talking about Mama in the deep holler. Emma is not free, is she? None of them are ever free. Once they carry my bones, they carry my mark. They will return to me eventually. They always do. The candle flames flickered higher, revealing more details of the cave chamber. Ray could see passages leading deeper into the mountain. Passages where more children might be hidden. Passages where this nightmare could stretch for miles underground. How long have you been stealing children? Since the mountains were young. Since the first settlers came to these hollows. I take what I need to survive. Nothing more. You, re-killing them. I am loving them. I am giving them eternal childhood. No growing old. No dying. No pain. They will be young and happy forever. Ray looked at Tyler. His face. The boy smiled, but his eyes held no recognition. No memory of his real parents. The thing wearing Tyler's body was just a shell filled with the bone lady's will. What do you want from me? Simple cooperation? You know which children are most vulnerable? Which families would not be missed immediately? Which cases would be written off as runaways? Ray realized he was being offered a choice. Become complicit in the abduction of more children, or watch Tyler and the others continue to fade until nothing remained but empty puppets. And if I refuse, then Tyler joins his predecessors. And I find another helpful adult to take your place. The bone lady gestured toward one of the cave walls. Its phone light had revealed bloody drawings, but the candlelight showed something else. Adult skeletons chained to the stone. Men and women who had been given the same choice. Men and women who had refused. Choose quickly, deputy. Tyler grows weaker by the hour. Ray looked at Tyler again. The boy, his skin was paler than before. His breathing shallow. The unnatural light in his eyes was dimming. I need time to think. Time is what we do not have. Choose now. Ray closed his eyes. Thought about his oath as a law enforcement officer. Thought about the families of missing children. Thought about Emma, sitting at home with bones woven into her memories. When he opened his eyes, Tyler had collapsed. The boy lay motionless on the cave floor, his skin gray as ash. He needed fresh life force, the bone lady explained calmly. I was hoping you would provide it willingly. Now I must take it. She reached toward Ray with those bone fingers, but instead of touching him, she touched the air around him. Ray felt something being pulled from his chest, something vital and warm. His vision blurred. His knees buckled. Tyler sat up with renewed vigor. The color returned to his cheeks. The light blazed in his eyes once more. Thank you, Deputy Ray, the boy said cheerfully. Mama says you were very helpful. Ray struggled to stand. He felt weak, drained, but still alive. That was just a sample, the bone lady said. to show you what cooperation feels like. Next time, I will take everything." Ray stumbled toward the cave entrance. Behind him, the stolen children waved goodbye with mechanical movements. "Remember, Deputy, I know where you live. I know where you work. I can reach you anywhere in these mountains." Ray made it to the cave entrance as dawn broke over the hollows. His truck sat where he left it, covered in morning dew. Everything looked normal, peaceful, but he could still hear that lullaby echoing from the depths of the mountain. Ray drove back to the sheriff's station in silence. He filed a report stating that Tyler Chen was found safe and returned to his family. No mention of caves or bone decorations or impossible choices. That afternoon, his parents called to thank him. They said Tyler was doing well, eating normally, playing with his toys, but he hummed constantly, an old song they had never heard before. Ray spent the next week trying to investigate the cave system. He returned with backup officers, but they found nothing. Empty tunnels that led nowhere. No signs of children or skeletal women. But every night, his dreams were filled with candlelit chambers and mechanical children waving goodbye. And every morning, he woke up feeling a little weaker, a little more drained. The bone lady was keeping her promise, taking pieces of him bit by bit. Ray began noticing changes in the missing children cases he worked. Emma Harding had stopped talking about her time in the deep holler, but she had also stopped playing with other children. She preferred to sit alone, humming her lullaby and braiding her hair. Tyler Chen was attending school again. His teacher said he was well behaved but strangely quiet. He completed his assignments without speaking and spent recess standing by himself near the playground fence. Other children seemed afraid of him. More children went missing over the following months, always from isolated mountain communities. Always returned within a week, unharmed but changed. Each child came back humming the same ancient melody. Each child carried the same unnatural light in their eyes. Ray investigated every case, but the pattern never varied. Children vanished from their yards or bedrooms. They were found days later in remote locations, catatonic but alive. Medical exams revealed no signs of trauma or malnutrition, but their families always reported the same behavioral changes afterward. Constant humming, social withdrawal, an obsession with braiding hair or weaving grass into intricate patterns. Ray began to understand the scope of what he was facing. The bone lady was not just kidnapping individual children. She was creating a network, a growing population of altered children who remained connected to her even after they returned home. Sleeper agents waiting for activation. The realization came to him during a late-night drive through the hollows. As he passed through mountain communities, he saw them. Children standing in bedroom windows. Children sitting on front porches. Children walking alone along dark roads. All of them humming the same lullaby. All of them watching his truck as he drove past. The bone lady had not just threatened him. She had recruited an army of child informants. Dozens of families now unknowingly harbored her agents. Children who reported Ray's movements. Children who could access any home in the region. Children who could help her identify new targets. Ray pulled over at a scenic overlook and called his supervisor. But as he dialed, he noticed something wrong with his hands. His fingers looked thinner, paler. The skin seemed almost translucent. He was wasting away. The bone lady was draining his life force slowly, night by night, dream by dream. Ray hung up the phone without completing the call. Even if he told his supervisor everything, who would believe him? Who would take action against a creature that existed only in mountain folklore? And how could he explain that half the children in 3 counties now belonged to something that should not exist? His radio crackled with static. Through the interference, he heard familiar voices. Children. Yes, voices. All of them speaking in unison. "Come home, Deputy Ray. Mama is waiting. Mama has been very patient." Ray looked up at the night sky. Stars shone through the mountain darkness like tiny eyes. All of them watching. All of them waiting. He started his truck and drove deeper into the hollows. Toward caves he knew he would never leave. Toward a choice he had already made without realizing it. Behind him, in houses scattered throughout the mountains, children stopped humming. They smiled with unnatural light in their eyes and went to bed early. Tomorrow, there would be new playmates in the deep holler nursery. Story 5. Walmart's midnight stalker around Pushpin, Martinsburg, West Virginia. The package of jerky felt warm in Danny's hands as he tore it open, exposing strips of meat that still had fingernails attached. He dropped the package immediately, watching as perfectly preserved human fingers scattered across the stockroom floor like discarded snacks. First night jitters. Manager Walsh appeared behind him without making a sound, his pale face reflecting the harsh fluorescent lighting. His eyes were too large for his skull, bulging like a nocturnal animal caught in headlights. Everyone gets squeamish at first. Danny stared at the fingers on the concrete. They were different sizes, different skin tones. Some had wedding rings still attached. All of them were labeled with Walmart price stickers and expiration dates 3 days in the future. "This is not jerky," Danny said, his voice cracking. Walsh smiled, revealing teeth that were too sharp and too numerous for a human mouth. "Shift ends when the meat runs out. Better get stocking." Danny had taken the overnight stalker job because he needed the money. Student loans were crushing him, and his day job at the auto parts store barely covered rent. Walmart paid double time for the midnight shift, and the work seemed simple enough. Unload trucks. Customers. Easy money for a college senior with insomnia problems anyway. The job posting had specified the Martinsburg location, which was strange since Danny lived 40 minutes away in Charlestown. But the pay was too good to pass up, and the manager had hired him over the phone without even asking for references. Walsh had sounded normal enough during their brief conversation, just another retail manager looking to fill spots on the graveyard shift. Now, surrounded by packages of human fingers labeled as beef jerky, Danny understood why they had trouble keeping employees. "I'm calling the police," Danny said, pulling out his phone. Walsh moved faster than anyone should be able to, crossing the stockroom in what seemed like a single step. His cold fingers wrapped around Danny's wrist with impossible strength. The phone clattered to the floor, its screen cracking against the concrete. "No need for outside interference," Walsh whispered. His breath smelled like formaldehyde and rotting meat. "This is a family business now. You signed the employment contract." Danny tried to pull away, but Walsh's grip tightened. Where the manager's fingers touched his skin, Danny felt a spreading numbness, as if his circulation was being cut off at the cellular level. "What are you?" Danny managed to ask. Walsh's smile widened, showing more teeth than should fit in any mouth. "Assistant manager. Actually, been with the company for 17 years. Employee of the month 6 times running." The thing wearing Walsh's name tag released Danny's arm and stepped back, straightening his blue vest with practiced corporate professionalism. Danny noticed that the name tag was not pinned to the fabric but seemed to be embedded directly in Walsh's chest, like it had grown there. "Now, let's get these products on the shelves. Morning shift starts in 6 hours, and customers get cranky when they can to find their usual snacks." Danny looked around the stockroom with new eyes. Dozens of boxes lined the walls, all labeled with familiar brand names and logos. But now he could see that something was wrong with every product. The Cheetos bags contained what looked like tiny human ears. The Slim Jims were definitely not made from beef. And the family-size bags of trail mix appeared to contain human teeth mixed with actual nuts and raisins. "Where do you get this stuff?" Danny asked. Walsh was loading packages onto a cart with mechanical efficiency. "Corporate sends us special inventory. This location serves a very particular customer base. Locals who know what they really buying. Travelers who get curious about authentic Appalachian delicacies." Danny thought about the job posting again. Why had they specifically wanted someone from out of town? Someone who would not be familiar with the local community or the store's reputation. "The previous overnight stalker," Danny said slowly. "What happened to him?" Walsh paused in his loading, those oversized eyes focusing on Danny with predatory interest. "Kevin, it's been promoted to a different department. Very hands-on position." Walsh opened another box and pulled out what appeared to be a package of Vienna sausages. But instead of the usual pale pink cylinders, the container held human fingers preserved in brine. Danny could see the price sticker. $3.47 for a pack of 8. Kevin was excellent at portion control, Walsh continued. Really understood how to maximize product value. Had good instincts for what customers wanted. Danny's stomach turned as he realized what Walsh was implying. Kevin had not quit or been fired. He had become inventory. "I quit," Danny said, backing toward the stockroom door. "I am not doing this." But when he reached for the handle, his hand passed through empty air. The door was gone, replaced by the same industrial shelving that lined the rest of the stockroom. Danny spun around, looking for any exit, but found only walls of inventory stretching in directions that should not have been possible given the building's actual size. "Shift ends when the meat runs out," Walsh repeated, his voice carrying harmonics that human vocal cords could not produce. That's store policy. No exceptions. Danny ran deeper into the stockroom, hoping to find another way out. But the aisles seemed to extend infinitely, filled with products that became more horrifying with each step. Baby food jars containing what looked like ground human tissue. Candy bars with wrappers that moved on their own. frozen dinners with actual human faces visible through the plastic packaging. And throughout it all, Walsh's voice echoed from the overhead speakers, mixed with the usual Walmart ambient music. Cleanup needed in aisle 7. Danny to aisle 7 for product demonstration. Danny found himself in what appeared to be a recreation of the store's actual sales floor, complete with checkout lanes and customer service desk. But the products on the shelves were the same nightmare inventory from the stockroom. Packages of human fingers sat next to normal items like dish soap and laundry detergent, as if cannibalism was just another consumer choice. A customer was browsing the meat section, an elderly woman with silver hair and a pleasant smile, examining packages of what were clearly human hands labeled as farm-fresh pork knuckles. "Excuse me, young man," she said to Danny. "Do these come in smaller sizes?" Just cooking for one." Danny stared at her in horror. She appeared completely normal, like someone's grandmother doing her weekly shopping. But she was casually discussing the purchase of human remains as if they were legitimate groceries. I don't work here," Danny stammered. The woman laughed. "Of course you do, dear. You wearing the vest." Danny looked down and found that he was indeed wearing a blue Walmart employee vest, complete with his name tag pinned to the chest. He had no memory of putting it on, but there it was, as if it had materialized while he was not paying attention. "Danny can help you with portion recommendations," Walsh said, appearing at the end of the aisle with his impossible smile. He is very knowledgeable about our specialty products. More customers began filling the store. All of them appeared normal at first glance, but when Danny looked closer, he noticed details that were off. Teeth that were too sharp, eyes that reflected light like an animal, movements that were just slightly wrong, as if they were copying human behavior without fully understanding it. And all of them shopped with the casual efficiency of regular customers, filling their carts with packages of human remains while discussing the weather and local sports scores. First time working retail, one customer asked Danny as he filled a cart with packages of human toes labeled as cocktail sausages. "You look a little green around the gills." Danny tried to respond, but found that his voice was not working properly. The words came out in the corporate script that every retail worker learned. "Is there anything else I can help you find today?" The customer smiled, showing teeth that were definitely not human. "Just browsing. Thanks. Love what they've done with the place. Much better selection than the old manager used to carry." Hours passed in a blur of customer service and restocking. Danny found himself going through the motions automatically, his body moving without conscious direction. He helped customers find products, made recommendations about freshness and preparation methods, and maintained the cheerful demeanor that corporate training demanded. But part of his mind remained trapped and screaming, watching helplessly as he assisted in the sale of human remains to creatures that were only pretending to be people. "You're getting the hang of it," Walsh said during what might have been a break period. They were standing in an employee area that resembled a normal break room, complete with motivational posters and a bulletin board covered in work schedules and safety reminders. But the motivational posters showed images of smiling employees holding packages of human organs. And the safety reminders focused on proper handling techniques for fresh meat and the importance of maintaining cold storage temperatures for optimal product preservation. "The company values team players," Walsh continued. "Employees who understand that customer satisfaction is our top priority." Kevin learned that lesson very well. Walsh opened a small refrigerator and pulled out what appeared to be a normal energy drink. But when he handed it to Danny, the liquid inside was thick and red, with chunks of what looked like tissue floating near the bottom. "Helps with the transition," Walsh explained. "Makes the work feel more natural." Danny wanted to refuse, but found himself drinking the horrible mixture without resistance. It tasted like copper and decay, but his body accepted it eagerly, as if he had been craving exactly this substance without knowing it. "Shift ends when the meat runs out," Walsh said again, but this time his voice came from inside Danny's head rather than through his ears. "The meat never runs out." Danny realized that he was trapped in a cycle that would continue forever. Every night, he would help stock shelves with human remains. Every night, he would assist customers who were not quite human in purchasing products that were not quite food. And every night, a part of him would die while another part learned to accept the routine. The worst part was not the horror of what he was doing. The worst part was how normal it was starting to feel. How his revulsion was being replaced by professional pride in doing the job well. How he was beginning to look forward to helping customers find exactly what they needed. Danny looked at his reflection in the break room mirror and saw that his eyes were starting to change. They were getting larger, more reflective. More like Walsh. Whose eyes? Employee of the month, Walsh said, appearing behind him in the reflection. You, the got real potential, Danny. Corporate is going to love you. Outside the break room, Danny could hear the familiar sounds of commerce. Shopping carts rolling across linoleum floors. Customers chatting about their purchases. The beeping of barcode scanners processing transactions. Just another night at Walmart, where the customer is always right, and the shift ends when the meat runs out. Story 6. Hungry lights of Klingman's Dome. Sarah, as headlamp beam cut through the fog like a knife through smoke. Her boots slipped on wet moss as she climbed the rocky trail toward Klingman's Dome. October in the Great Smoky Mountains meant death came early. The trees hung heavy with moisture that never seemed to dry. Everything rotted here. Everything fed the hungry earth below. The GPS in her hand showed 3 red dots. 3 missing hikers, all last seen chasing those damn lights. Tommy Chen, age 22, from Nashville. Rebecca Walsh, 34, from Memphis. Jake Morrison, 19, from right here in Gatlinburg. All experienced hikers, all smart enough to know better. All dead now. The Brown Mountain Lights had been drawing people into these Tennessee mountains for over a century. Cherokee legends spoke of spirits trapped between worlds. Civil War soldiers talk about ghost lights leading men to their deaths. Modern folks call them ball lightning or swamp gas. Anything to make sense of the impossible. Sarah knew better. She was a search and rescue specialist with 15 years in these mountains. She had seen things that would make most people quit and move to Kansas. But nothing had prepared her for what she found on those cameras. The ones the park rangers locked away. The ones they never showed for. Floating orbs with teeth. Sharp. Hungry. Real. Her radio crackled. Static filled her earpiece like angry hornets. Then silence so complete she could hear her own blood moving through her veins. The fog pressed closer, thick as cotton, cold as a grave. She was alone now, just her and the hungry dark pressing in from all sides. The smell hit her first. Sweet and rotten, like fruit left too long in the sun. But underneath that sweetness lurked something else, something metallic and sharp, something that made her stomach turn and her mouth fill with bitter spit. Death, fresh death and old death and death that had been waiting in these mountains since before white men ever set foot on Cherokee land. Sarah found the first body wedged between 2 boulders near the old Appalachian trail marker. What used to be Jake Morrison was now wrapped tight in thick green moss. Sphagnum moss, the kind that preserved bog bodies for thousands of years. The kind that grew in places where things died and stayed dead. His face was still visible through the green blanket. Eyes wide open, blue as cornflowers, staring at nothing and everything. His mouth was stretched in a silent scream that would never end. The moss pulsed like a heartbeat. Slow, steady, alive. Sarah stumbled backward. Her light swept across the forest floor like a searchlight hunting for bombers. More green mounds dotted the landscape. Dozens of them scattered between the trees like graves in an abandoned cemetery. All roughly human-shaped, all breathing that slow, wet rhythm that made her skin crawl. She counted 27 mounds. 27 people who had come looking for answers and found something else entirely. She grabbed Jake, his camera from his belt. The leather strap was still warm, still damp with sweat that would never dry. The memory card was still there, tucked safe in its little slot. Sarah, his hand shook as she scrolled through the final photos. Her breath came in short, sharp puffs that turned to ice crystals in the mountain air. Normal hiking shots at first. Jake grinning at the camera. Tommy and Rebecca setting up their tent. The 3 of them sharing a meal of trail mix and energy bars. Ordinary people doing ordinary things before the world turned inside out. Then the lights appeared, small at first, dancing between the trees like fireflies on a summer night. Beautiful, innocent, magic made real in a world that had forgotten how to believe in magic. But fireflies done to have rows of needle-sharp teeth. Fireflies done to hunt in packs. Fireflies done to leave behind moss-wrapped corpses that breathed without lungs. The orbs grew larger in each photo, brighter, more hungry. They pulsed with cold fire that hurt to look at directly. In the final images, Sarah could see faces inside the lights. Human faces twisted with pain and rage and something else. Something that might have been hunger or might have been madness. The last photo showed them surrounding the campsite, a perfect circle of glowing mouths. 20 or 30 orbs floating just above the ground. Ready to feed, ready to add 3 more names to the list of people who had vanished in these mountains. Sarah, as headlamp flickered. The battery indicator blinked red in the corner of her vision. She had maybe an hour of light left. Maybe less if the cold drained the power faster than expected. The fog grew thicker around her. It moved wrong. too deliberate, too smart, like something was pushing it forward with invisible hands. The temperature dropped another 10 degrees. Her breath came out in white clouds that hung in the air like ghosts. Something brushed against her shoulder. Soft, cold, gone before she could turn around. She spun anyway. Nothing there, just trees and shadows and that awful smell getting stronger with each breath. The moss-covered mounds were closer now. She was sure of it. They had moved while she wasn't looking, sliding across the forest floor like slugs leaving trails of decay. She spun around. Nothing there, just trees and shadows and that awful smell getting stronger. The moss-covered mounds were closer now. She was sure of it. They had moved while she wasn't looking. Her radio came to life with a burst of static that sounded like screaming. Then a voice, weak and distorted, filtered through layers of interference and something else. Something that made the words sound like they were coming from underwater. Or from inside a grave. Sarah, can you hear me? The lights. They were coming. Jake, his voice. Impossible. Jake was dead, wrapped in moss like a Christmas present for something that should not exist. His body was right there, 20 feet away, breathing that horrible rhythm that had nothing to do with life. Jake, where are you? Her own voice sounded strange, small, lost in the vastness of the mountains. Dawn, to follow the lights. They were not what you think. They were hunting. They've been hunting for so long. The voice grew weaker, more distant, like someone walking away down a long tunnel. Hunting for what, Jake? What do they want? Not food. Never food. Something else. Something we carry. Something they lost. The transmission cut out. Sarah stared at the radio. The display showed no incoming signal. No bars. No connection to the outside world. Just static and her own racing heartbeat and the sound of moss breathing in the darkness around her. A soft glow appeared between the trees ahead, beautiful and warm like candlelight in a church window. It pulsed gently, calling to her without words, promising answers, promising safety, promising an end to the fear that had been eating her alive since she first saw those photos. Sarah knew better. She had spent 15 years in these mountains. She had pulled bodies from ravines and caves and rivers that ran red with mountain runoff. She knew the difference between salvation and damnation. She turned and ran. The lights followed like hunting dogs on a scent. They moved through the forest without sound, without disturbing a single branch or leaf, always at the edge of her vision, always just out of reach, patient as death itself. Her headlamp died with a soft click that might as well have been thunder. Darkness swallowed her whole, complete, total, the kind of darkness that existed before the first star was born. But the lights remained, growing brighter, growing closer, growing hungry for whatever it was they had been seeking for over 100 years. They moved like wolves through the forest, silent and patient, always at the edge of her vision, always just out of reach. Her headlamp died with a soft click. Darkness swallowed her whole, but the lights remained, growing brighter, growing hungry. Sarah felt the first strand of moss brush against her ankle, soft and wet and alive like the tongue of some sleeping giant. More strands reached up from the forest floor, wrapping around her legs like green rope, around her waist, around her arms. Each touch burned cold against her skin. The lights floated closer. She could see them clearly now in the absolute darkness. Perfect spheres of cold fire that cast no shadows. And inside each one, swimming in that terrible light, she could see them. The faces, dozens of faces pressed against the inside of each orb like prisoners trying to escape. And below the faces, circling around the bottom of each sphere, a mouth full of teeth like broken glass. Like needles, like everything sharp and cutting and wrong in the world. The moss pulled her down, into the soft earth that smelled of decay and old death, into the embrace of all the other hunters and hikers and curious fools who had come looking for the brown mountain lights and found something else entirely. Something that had been waiting for them. Sarah's camera fell from her hand. The automatic flash went off once, twice, 3 times. White light exploded through the forest like lightning, capturing her final moments. The lights feeding, the moss growing, the forest claiming another victim for its collection. Her last thought before the green darkness took her was simple, clear, terrifying. The lights weren't hunting for food. Bodies meant nothing to them. Flesh was just meat that rotted and fed the earth. They were hunting for something else, something they needed, something human that couldn't be touched or weighed or measured. Something that lived inside people and died when they died. Something they had lost long ago and had been trying to steal back ever since. And they had been collecting it for over 100 years. One soul at a time. 3 weeks later, Park Ranger Tom Bradley found Sarah's camera at the base of Clingman Stone. The plastic case was cracked. The lens was fogged with moisture, but the memory card was intact. Mostly. The first dozen photos showed normal search and rescue operations. Sarah checking her GPS. Sarah examining tracks in the mud. Sarah doing her job the way she had done it for 15 years. Then the corruption started. Images that made no sense. Light that bent in impossible directions. Shadows that moved independent of the objects that cast them. But one image remained perfect. Crystal clear, sharp as a scream in the middle of the night. Sarah wrapped in moss, eyes open, staring directly at the camera. And her mouth was moving, opening and closing like she was trying to speak, trying to warn whoever found the photo. Tom deleted it immediately, filed his report, marked the case closed, just like all the others, just like the 47 other disappearances in the past decade that nobody talked about. Nobody wanted to remember. That night, he drove home through the winding mountain roads. His headlights cut through fog that seemed to follow his truck. In his rearview mirror, he caught glimpses of something moving in the trees. Soft points of light dancing between the branches like stars fallen to earth. Beautiful, inviting, warm as summer nights and childhood dreams. Tom pulled over. The engine ticked as it cooled. He stepped out of his truck. The lights pulsed gently in the darkness beyond the tree line, calling him home to a place he had never been but somehow remembered. Story 7. Appalachian Trail doppelgangers. Marcus dropped his backpack and stared at himself across the campfire. Same dirty hiking boots with the left sole peeling away from too many miles on rocky trails. Same torn flannel shirt from his college days at Virginia Tech. Same 3-day stubble that itched like hell in the October humidity that clung to these mountains like a fever dream. The only difference was the smile. His double smile, too wide, too eager, too hungry, like something that had learned to smile by watching humans do it but never quite understood why. The trail mix bag rustled in the other Marcus's hands. It sounded wrong, like something moving inside a paper sack. Something alive and angry and desperate to get out. The sound made his teeth ache, made his skin crawl with invisible insects that left no marks but plenty of fear. This wasn't too possible. Marcus had been hiking alone for 6 days through the Blue Ridge Mountains, starting at Shenandoah National Park and heading south toward McAfee Knob, the most photographed spot on the entire Appalachian Trail. The place where every hiker stopped to take the same picture of themselves sitting on the rocky outcrop with the Roanoke Valley spread out below like a green carpet. He had not seen another soul for 3 days. No other backpackers with their expensive gear and trail mix. No day hikers from the suburbs with their water bottles and energy bars. No park rangers making their rounds. Nothing but trees and rocks and the endless brown ribbon of the trail stretching toward Tennessee. The silence had been perfect. Complete. The kind of quiet that city people paid good money to experience for a weekend before running back to their cars and their cell phones and their lives full of noise. But here he was, sitting across from himself like looking into a twisted mirror that reflected things that should not exist. Things that had no business being real in a world that made sense. The double spoke without moving its lips. The words came from everywhere and nowhere. From the crackling fire and the rustling leaves and the deep places between the trees where shadows lived and bred. From inside Marcus, his own skull-like thoughts that belonged to someone else. Hungry, trail mix is fresh, made it myself from local ingredients. Everything organic, everything natural, everything that grows in these mountains when the sun goes down. The bag split open along seams that had not been there a moment before. Dark chunks spilled onto the ground between them. Not nuts and dried fruit and chocolate chips like the kind he bought at REI. Something else, something that had never been meant for human consumption. Something that moved. Beetles with human teeth chattered across the forest floor. Their shells gleamed black in the firelight, each one the size of a child's thumb, each one hungry for warm flesh and fresh blood. Centipedes made of finger bones clicked and scuttled between the beetles. 20 legs on each creature. Each leg a tiny human finger complete with nail and knuckle and the pale lines where rings had once been worn. Earthworms as thick as garden hoses writhed in the dirt, but they were not earthworms. They were pale and translucent and filled with dark fluid that leaked onto the Virginia soil like ink from a broken pen. Inside each one, Marcus could see shapes. Human shapes, tiny people screaming silently as they dissolved in whatever acid flowed through those terrible bodies. And underneath it all, the smell of fresh graves. Rich dirt that had never seen sunlight. Earth that fed on the dead and grew fat on decay. Soil that remembered every body that had ever been buried in it and hungered for more. Marcus scrambled backward. His heel caught a tree root thick as his wrist and sent him sprawling into the undergrowth. Thorns tore at his jacket. Leaves that felt too much like skin brushed against his face. The double, his smile stretched wider. Its eyes reflected the firelight like an animal. His predator eyes, patient and cruel and eternally hungry. Those were his eyes, his green eyes that Sarah said reminded her of deep forest pools. But there was nothing human behind them now. Nothing that had ever been human. Just hunger wearing the mask of his face. Dawn? To be rude. Marcus? Mom always said sharing was caring. Mom always said we should be polite to guests. Even uninvited ones. That voice. Perfect. Identical down to the last inflection. Even the slight southern drawl he had picked up during 4 years of college in North Carolina. Even the way he said, Mom, like it still hurt after all these years. But Mom had been dead for 8 years. Cancer took her slow and mean, one cell at a time. She died in a hospital bed that smelled like disinfectant and false hope while he held her hand and promised everything would be okay. The double knew that. Of course it did. It was him. All of him. Every memory and scar and secret shame copied down to the last detail. Every moment of joy and every night of terror. Every time he had failed someone who needed him. Every time he had run when he should have stayed. What are you? I am you. Marcus. The better version. The version that doesn't waste time hiking through mountains looking for meaning that I ascend to there. The version that goes home. Takes care of business. Lives your life the way it should be lived. The way Sarah deserves to have it lived. The fire crackled between them. Sparks danced up toward the star-drunk sky like tiny souls ascending to heaven. Or descending to hell. In these mountains, it was hard to tell the difference. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the firelight, something howled. Not a coyote, not a wolf. Those animals knew better than to come to these places where the old stories lived and breathed. Something that had learned to make those sounds without ever being those things. Something that had listened to the real animals for years and practiced until it got the pitch just right. Just wrong enough to fool anyone who might be listening. Marcus, his hand found his cell phone in his jacket pocket. The screen was cracked from yesterday, his fall near Tinker Cliffs. No signal. Nothing but dead air and static that sounded almost like voices if you listened too close. Almost like screaming if you let your imagination run wild. He was 40 miles from the nearest road. 60 miles from anything that resembled civilization. Just him and the mountains and whatever was wearing his face across the dying fire. The double reached into its backpack. The same backpack he carried. Same REI brand. Same faded blue color. Same patches sewn over holes that had been there so long he forgot how they started. It pulled out a photograph. Marcus, this photograph. The one he kept in his wallet next to his driver, his license and his insurance card and the $20 bill he saved for emergencies. Him and Sarah at Virginia Beach last summer. The trip they took to celebrate 2 years together. Her blonde hair whipping in the ocean breeze like wheat in a field. Her laugh frozen in time on cheap photo paper that would fade and yellow but never truly capture how beautiful she looked when she was happy. When she still believed he might be worth keeping around. She misses you. Marcus. Calls every night around 9 when she gets home from work. Leaves messages you never return. Tells you about her day. About the promotion she might get. About the wedding her sister is planning. She is starting to think you don't love her anymore. Starting to think maybe she was wrong about you. The photograph crumpled in the double S fist. When it opened its hand again, the image had changed. The beach was gone. The sunshine was gone. Sarah sat alone in their apartment, on the couch they bought at a yard sale and covered with a blanket to hide the stains. She was crying. Her makeup ran in black streaks down her cheeks. Her phone lay on the coffee table beside her. Screen dark, waiting for a call that would never come. Waiting for him to stop being a coward long enough to call the woman he claimed to love. She deserves better than a man who runs to the mountains every time life gets complicated. Every time someone expects him to be an adult instead of a scared little boy playing dress-up in hiking boots. Marcus felt the words hit like physical blows. Each one true, each one cutting deeper than the last. Sarah did deserve better. She always had. She deserved someone who would call her back. Someone who would show up when he said he would. Someone who wouldn't disappear into the wilderness for weeks at a time because he was too afraid to deal with real problems in the real world. That is why he was here. Running away like he always did when things got real. When Sarah started talking about the future, about moving in together officially, about meeting his father who lived alone in that big empty house in Richmond and drank himself to sleep every night since Mom died. About all the things that required him to be better than he was. Better than he had ever been. The double stood up slow and deliberate. It moved exactly like Marcus. Same limp from the motorcycle accident when he was 19 and thought he was invincible. Same way of favoring the left shoulder after too many years of construction work before he went back to school. Same unconscious habit of running his fingers through his hair when he was nervous. But everything was wrong. The proportions were off by fractions that his eye could detect but his brain couldn't to process. The timing delayed by milliseconds that made his skin crawl. Like watching himself on a badly dubbed foreign film where the words never quite match the mouth movements. Eat with me, Marcus. Just a bite, then I'll go home. I'll fix things with Sarah. I'll be the man you never could. The trail mix scattered across the ground between them. Beetles crawled over his hiking boots. Centipedes wound around his ankles like jewelry made of nightmares. The grave dirt stuck to his skin, cold and damp and hungry for living flesh. Marcus ran. Behind him, something that sounded like his own laughter echoed through the Virginia woods. But the timing was wrong. The pitch was off, like a recording played back at the wrong speed. He crashed through undergrowth that tore at his clothes and skin. Branches whipped his face, roots grabbed at his feet. The trail disappeared behind him, swallowed by darkness that moved with purpose. The double followed without sound, without breathing, without the heavy footfalls of someone carrying 40 pounds of gear. Marcus, his lungs burned. His legs screamed, but he kept running because stopping meant facing the thing that wore his face. The thing that knew all his secrets, all his failures, all the reasons Sarah would be better off with someone else. Anyone else. His foot hit empty air. The ground vanished beneath him. He tumbled down a rocky slope that had no bottom, no end, just pain and darkness and the sound of his own body breaking against stone. When he stopped falling, Marcus found himself at the bottom of a ravine. Water trickled somewhere in the darkness. His left arm hung at an impossible angle. Blood ran down his face from a dozen cuts. But he was alive, broken but breathing. Above him, the double appeared at the edge of the cliff, perfectly silhouetted against the starfield, uninjured, unmarked, ready to take his place in a world that would never know the difference. Thanks for the life, Marcus. I'll take good care of it. Sarah will never know you. Gone. The double disappeared. Its footsteps faded into the night, heading back toward civilization, toward Sarah, toward the life Marcus had been too afraid to live properly. Marcus tried to move. Pain shot through his spine like electricity. His legs wouldn't to respond. Broken back, probably severed spinal cord. He would die here in this ravine, alone, while something else wore his face and slept in his bed and kissed the woman he loved. Hours passed, maybe days. Time moved different at the bottom of the world. Marcus drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes he heard voices, other hikers calling for help. But when he tried to respond, only whispers came out. On the third day, they found him. Park rangers with search dogs and medical equipment. They airlifted him to a hospital in Roanoke. Intensive care, surgery, physical therapy that would take years. But Marcus was alive. The first thing he did when he could hold a phone was call Sarah. She answered on the first ring. Her voice was strange, distant, like she was talking to a stranger. Marcus, where are you calling from? The hospital. I had an accident on the trail. I've been here for 2 weeks. Silence, then laughter. Not the bright, musical laugh he remembered. Something else. Something that sounded like his own voice coming out of her throat. It's impossible, Marcus. They've been home for 10 days. We had dinner last night. Don, do you remember? The phone slipped from his numb fingers. Outside his hospital window, Virginia stretched away toward the mountains, toward McAfee Knob, toward the place where something had stolen his life and left him with nothing but broken bones and impossible memories. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to remember Sarah, this real laugh, the one from before. But it was already fading, being replaced by something else, something that sounded almost right but wasn't. In the parking lot below, a figure that looked exactly like him helped Sarah into a car that used to be his. They drove away together, toward a life that used to belong to him. The nurse came in to check his vitals. She smelled like trail mix, like beetles and grave dirt and things that moved in the darkness between trees. When she smiled, her teeth were too sharp. Story 8, not the year of Smoky Mountain Highway, but dashcam footage would make headlines 3 days later. Frame by frame, investigators would watch a human head rotate 180 degrees. They would see shoulders that never moved, a neck that bent like rubber, and then nothing but empty road stretching into the Smoky Mountain darkness. But Detective Sarah Chan was watching it now, alone in the evidence room at 2 in the morning. The coffee had gone cold hours ago. Her eyes burned from staring at the screen, but she could not look away. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m., October 13th. Highway 441 wound through the mountains like a black snake. Tommy Briggs had been driving his rig south toward Georgia when his headlights caught the figure on the shoulder. Sarah hit rewind, watched it again. The person stood perfectly still beside the guardrail, thumb extended, standard hitchhiker pose. Nothing unusual about that part. People still hitched rides through these mountains, despite the warnings. Despite the stories, Tommy's cab door opened with a hydraulic hiss that the audio picked up clearly. The figure approached with long, measured steps. Sarah leaned closer to the monitor. Something about the walk bothered her. The legs moved wrong, too fluid, too many joints bending in places where joints should not bend. "Thanks for stopping," a voice said. Male, pleasant, normal. "No problem, buddy. Where are you headed?" "South." "That works. Climb on up." The passenger door slammed shut. Sarah could see the back of the hitchhiker's head now. Dark hair, average height, wearing a gray hoodie that looked new, clean. For 23 minutes, they drove in relative silence. Tommy hummed along to the radio. Classic rock station out of Knoxville. The hitchhiker sat motionless, never adjusted position, never looked around, just stared straight ahead through the windshield. Sarah fast-forwarded through the quiet stretches. Her partner Marcus had already watched this footage 6 times. He said nothing happened until the end. But Sarah wanted to see it all. She needed to understand what happened to Tommy Briggs. The first sign of trouble came at the 24-minute mark. Tommy? His humming stopped mid-song. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You okay there, friend?" The hitchhiker did not respond. "Hey, you all right?" Still nothing. Sarah could see Tommy glancing sideways now. Concerned. The Good Samaritan realizing he might have made a mistake. "Look, if you need medical attention, I can call someone. Got a CB radio right here." That was when it happened. The hitchhiker, his head began to turn. Not his shoulders, not his body, just his head, slowly, deliberately, like a security camera panning across a parking lot. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She had watched this part a dozen times now, but it never got easier. The human neck was not designed to move like that. Tendons should have snapped, vertebrae should have cracked, blood vessels should have torn, but the head kept turning. 90 degrees, 100, 120. Tommy started screaming. The truck swerved violently to the right. Tires squealed against asphalt. The camera shook as the rig fought against the guardrail. Sparks flew past the windshield like angry fireflies. 150 degrees, 160. The hitchhiker's face came into view. Sarah hit pause, studied the features frozen on screen. Male, Caucasian, maybe 30 years old. Perfectly normal except for the eyes. Those eyes held no emotion, no malice, no humanity. They were the eyes of a predator studying prey. 180 degrees. The head had completed its rotation. The hitchhiker now faced backward in his seat while his body continued to face forward. An impossible position. A position that should have killed him instantly. But he was smiling. Tommy's screaming reached a pitch that made Sarah wince. The truck jerked left, right, left again, completely out of control now. Then the audio cut to static. The video continued for another 10 seconds. Sarah could see Tommy, his mouth moving, but no sound came through. The hitchhiker remained frozen in that impossible position, head backward, body forward, smiling that terrible smile. At exactly 12:14 a.m., the screen went black. Search teams found Tommy, his rig 3 hours later. It had come to rest in a grove of pine trees 200 yards off the highway. The cab was intact, no major damage, engine still running, radio still playing classic rock. But Tommy was gone. The passenger seat was empty except for a small pile of deer hooves. Cloven hooves, like you might find in any forest. Nothing unusual about them except their placement. They had been arranged in a perfect circle, a crown of bone and keratin. In the center of the circle sat a single human tooth, a molar, still bloody at the root. Sarah had spent the last 3 days interviewing locals, mountain people who had lived in these hills their whole lives. They spoke in whispers about things that walked upright but were not human. Things that mimicked voices, things that bent the wrong way. Not deer, they called them. The old-timers remembered stories from their grandparents. Native American legends about creatures that looked almost right but not quite. Skinwalkers from further west. Wendigo from up north, but this was something else. Something specific to these mountains. They got too many joints, an elderly woman named Ruth had told her. Walk like people but bend like snakes. You see one, you run. You don't, to look back. You don't, to stop running till you reach blessed ground. Sarah had dismissed it as local folklore, mountain superstition. But then she watched the dashcam footage. Now she sat in the evidence room, studying frame after frame of impossible anatomy. The way the legs bent, the way the arms moved. Too many joints in all the wrong places. Her phone buzzed. Text message from Marcus. Another one. Sarah, his blood went cold. Another what? Hitchhiker pickup. Highway 129. Dashcam footage just came in. She grabbed her keys and coat, ran for the parking garage. The drive to the new crime scene took 45 minutes through winding mountain roads. October mist clung to the valleys like cobwebs. Her headlights cut through the darkness but seemed to push it only a few feet ahead of the car. The second truck was a blue Peterbilt, different make and model from Tommy's rig. This driver was named Carl Hendricks, age 52, father of 3, 20-year veteran of the road. Carl's truck sat in a Waffle House parking lot just off Highway 129. Engine running, lights on, radio playing country music, but no Carl. The passenger seat contained the same arrangement. Deer hooves in a circle, human tooth in the center. This time it was an incisor. Front tooth, the blood was still wet. Marcus met her at the scene. Footage is worse than the last one, he said quietly. Head goes all the way around. Full 360. Sarah felt sick. Any witnesses? Waitress inside saw the truck pull in around midnight. Says she watched the driver get out and walk toward the building. Then she got busy with other customers. When she looked again 20 minutes later, the truck was still running, but nobody was inside. Security cameras? Parking lot cam caught some of it. Driver definitely got out, but then the image goes to static, just like the dash cam. They spent the next hour processing the scene. Same forensics team that had worked Tommy's truck. Same baffled expressions. Same lack of physical evidence beyond the hooves and teeth. Sarah was bagging the tooth when her phone rang. Unknown number. Detective Chen. Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice. Male. Pleasant. Normal. Thanks for stopping. Her hand froze. Those were the exact words from the dashcam footage. The hitchhiker. His first words to Tommy. Who is this? No problem, buddy. Where are you headed? Different voice now. Tommy's voice. But Tommy was missing. Had been missing for 3 days. South, said a third voice. The hitchhiker again. Sarah motioned frantically to Marcus. He pulled out his phone to record. That works. Climb on up. The call ended. Sarah stared at her phone. The number showed as blocked. No way to trace it, but someone had just played back the exact conversation from Tommy's dashcam. Word for word. Inflection for inflection. What was that about? Marcus asked. Before Sarah could answer, her phone rang again. Same block number. She answered on speakerphone this time. You okay there, friend? Tommy's voice. Heavy breathing. Hey, you all right? Tommy again, but more concerned now. Then silence. Long, horrible silence. Look, if you need medical attention, I can call someone. Got a CB radio right here. The screaming started. Tommy's voice, raw with terror. The same screams from the dashcam footage, but clearer now. More immediate, like he was screaming directly into the phone. Sarah hung up. Marcus was pale. How is that possible? Tommy has been missing for 3 days. Before Sarah could respond, every phone in the parking lot started ringing. Her phone, Marcus' phone, the forensics team's phones. Even the waitress inside the Waffle House was answering her phone with a confused expression. Sarah's phone displayed incoming call, but no number. She answered despite every instinct telling her not to. Detective Chen, came her own voice through the speaker. She nearly dropped the phone. Who is this? Asked her own voice again. Then Tommy's voice. No problem, buddy. Where are you headed? The hitchhiker. South. Tommy. That works. Climb on up. The same conversation. Playing again. But now it included her part of the phone call from 2 minutes ago. Marcus grabbed his radio. Dispatch, we need backup at the Waffle House on 129. Something is happening here. Static answered him. Dispatch. Do you copy? More static. Then Tommy's voice came through the radio. Thanks for stopping. Marcus threw the radio down. What the hell is going on? All around them, phones continued to ring. The forensics team was backing away from the truck. One of them was crying. Another was running toward his car. Sarah looked up at the parking lot as security camera. The red light was blinking, recording, but as she watched, the camera began to turn. Slowly, deliberately, like a head rotating on a neck that could bend too far. The camera completed a full rotation and stopped. Now it pointed directly down at them instead of across the parking lot. Through the Waffle House window, Sarah could see the waitress still on the phone. But now she was standing perfectly still. Not talking, not moving, just holding the phone to her ear with her head tilted at an impossible angle. Marcus grabbed Sarah's arm. We need to leave, now. They ran for their cars. Behind them, phones continued to ring throughout the parking lot. The same conversation playing over and over. Tommy's last minutes replaying like a broken record. Sarah's His hands shook as she started the engine. The radio crackled to life without her touching it. "Thanks for stopping," said the pleasant male voice. She turned the radio off. The voice continued anyway. "No problem, buddy. Where are you headed?" "South." Sarah floored the accelerator. The car shot out of the parking lot onto Highway 129. In her rearview mirror, she could see Marcus following close behind. The Waffle House lights grew smaller but never disappeared completely. Her phone rang again. She ignored it. It kept ringing. She turned it off. It kept ringing anyway. Finally, she answered. "Detective Chen, you okay there, friend?" Tommy, his voice, but different now. Distorted, like it was coming from underwater. "Tommy, Tommy, is that you? Hey, you alright, Tommy? Where are you? They've been looking for you. Look, if you need medical attention, I can call someone. Got a CB radio right here." The screaming started again, but this time, Sarah heard something else underneath Tommy. His terror. Laughter. Quiet, pleasant laughter. She hung up and threw the phone into the passenger seat. The highway stretched ahead through the mountains. Dark trees pressed close on both sides. October mist swirled in her headlights like ghosts. She drove faster, desperate to put distance between herself and whatever was happening back at that parking lot. Her phone buzzed. Text message. She glanced down despite herself. "South." Just that one word. No number. No timestamp. Another buzz. "Thanks for stopping." Another. "No problem, buddy. Where are you headed?" The texts were coming faster now. The entire conversation from the dashcam footage, broken into individual messages, but interspersed with new ones. Messages that had never been part of the original recording. "Detective Chen, we need to leave. Now. Tommy. Where are you?" Her own words from tonight. Someone was texting her the conversation she had just had. In real time, Sarah pulled over at a scenic overlook. Her hands were shaking too badly to drive safely. Marcus pulled up behind her. He approached her car cautiously. "You getting the text too?" he asked. She nodded. "How is this possible?" "I don't. You know. But Sarah, we need to call for backup. Real backup. FBI. State police. Something." She tried her radio again. Static. Then Tommy. His voice. "Thanks for stopping." Marcus tried his radio. Same result. "Our phones are compromised," Sarah said. "Whatever is doing this, it is using our own communications against us. So what do we do?" Before Sarah could answer, she saw headlights approaching from the south. A single vehicle climbing the mountain road toward them. As it got closer, she could see it was a truck. Big rig, just like Tommy, just like Carl. The truck slowed as it approached their position. Sarah could see the driver through the windshield. Male, middle-aged, looked normal enough. The truck stopped. The driver rolled down his window. "Evening, officers. Everything all right up here?" His voice was pleasant, normal, but Sarah noticed he didn't quite look at them when he spoke. His gaze seemed focused on something just over their shoulders. We're fine," Marcus called back. "Just taking a break. Long night for driving," the trucker said. "Lot of strange things happening on these roads lately." "What kind of strange things?" The trucker smiled. Even in the darkness, Sarah could see his teeth. "Too many teeth? Too sharp. Hitchhikers," he said. "Folks picking up riders who aren't quite what they seem." Sarah's hand moved toward her weapon. Something was wrong here. The trucker's silhouette looked off. His shoulders were too narrow. His neck too long. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about some missing drivers, would you?" Marcus asked. The trucker's head began to turn toward them. Slowly, deliberately, Sarah drew her gun. "Marcus, get back to the car." The trucker's head kept turning. 90 degrees, 100. "Thanks for stopping," he said in Tommy's voice. Marcus ran for his car. Sarah backpedaled toward hers, gun trained on the truck's cab. The trucker's head completed its rotation. Now he faced them while his body still pointed forward. He was still smiling. "No problem, buddy. Where are you headed?" Sarah fired 3 shots through the truck's windshield. The glass spider webbed but didn't shatter. The trucker didn't flinch. "South," he said in the hitchhiker's voice. Sarah emptied her clip into the cab. Every shot hit its mark. But the trucker just sat there, head turned backward, smiling that impossible smile. She ran for her car, threw it into gear. Marcus was already moving, tires squealing against asphalt. In her rearview mirror, she watched the truck execute a perfect 3-point turn. No human driver could have made that turn. The truck moved like a living thing, like something with too many joints in all the wrong places. Her phone rang. She answered without thinking. "Detective Chen," came her own voice. Evening, officers. Everything all right up here? The trucker. His pleasant voice. We're fine. Just taking a break. Marcus? His voice now. The conversation was replaying every word they had just spoken. But underneath the familiar voices, Sarah heard something else. Heavy breathing. And that quiet, pleasant laughter. She hung up and threw the phone into the backseat. The highway wound down through the mountains toward Gatlinburg. Sarah's speedometer rate 85. Too fast for these curves, but she didn't care. She needed distance. She needed civilization. She needed help. Behind her, Marcus, his headlights followed faithfully. Behind him, nothing but empty road. But Sarah kept checking her mirrors anyway. Her radio crackled to life again. Thanks for stopping. She turned it off. The voice continued, no problem, buddy. Where are you headed? She ripped the radio from its mounting and threw it out the window. It shattered against the asphalt, but she could still hear the voices. They seemed to be coming from inside the car now. South, that works. Climb on up. The same conversation. Always the same conversation. Like a recording stuck on repeat. But with each repetition, the voices became clearer. More real, like the speakers were sitting right there in the car with her. Sarah rounded a sharp curve and saw lights ahead. Gas station. 24-hour place that catered to truckers and tourists. She had never been so happy to see other people in her life. She pulled into the parking lot. Marcus right behind her. They met at the entrance, both breathing hard. Did you hear the voices too? Marcus asked. Sarah nodded, coming from inside the car. Even after I destroyed the radio. Same here. Sarah, I think we were in over our heads. The gas station was bright and warm. Normal. The clerk behind the counter looked up as they entered. Young guy, maybe 20, wearing a name tag that said, Brad. Evening, Brad said. Pretty late to be out on the roads. We're police officers, Sarah said, showing her badge. We need to use your phone. Sure thing. Right behind the counter here. Sarah dialed the state police dispatch. The line was clear. No static. No voices from the dashcam footage. Just a normal phone call to normal people. State police, this is Dispatcher Williams. This is Detective Chen, Sevier County Sheriff's Department. We have an emergency situation on Highway 129. Need immediate backup and technical support. What's the nature of the emergency? Detective. Sarah tried to explain. Missing truckers. Impossible dashcam footage. Communications being compromised. A hitchhiker who could turn his head 180 degrees. She could hear the skepticism in the dispatcher's voice. Detective, are you feeling all right? Maybe you should head back to the station. I'm perfectly fine. We have evidence. Video footage. Physical evidence. This is a real situation. I'll send a unit to do a wellness check on you. Stay where you are. The line went dead. Sarah hung up the phone. Behind the counter, Brad was watching her with interest. Rough night? He asked. Something like that. Marcus was buying coffee from the vending machine. His hands were still shaking. Sarah noticed he kept glancing toward the windows, watching for headlights. You know, Brad said conversationally, we get a lot of truckers through here. They tell stories about the roads. Strange things they've seen. What kind of stories? Oh, the usual mountain stuff. Things that look like people but aren't. Things that walk wrong. Hitchhikers who dawn to cast shadows. Sarah studied Brad, his face. He seemed genuinely helpful. Just a kid working the night shift, trying to make conversation with stressed out cops. Have you heard anything specific about Highway 129 or 441? Matter of fact, I have. Driver came through here a couple nights ago. Really shook up, said he picked up a hitchhiker who wouldn't stop staring at him. When he finally asked the guy to stop, the hitchhiker turned around to face him. But only his head turned. Body stayed facing forward. Sarah, his blood went cold. What happened to the driver? Done. Do you know? He bought some coffee and left. Haven't seen him since. Brad paused. Why? You think something happened to him? Before Sarah could answer, headlights swept across the gas station windows. A truck was pulling into the parking lot. Big rig. Sarah couldn't make out the make or model in the darkness. Marcus appeared at her shoulder. We should go, agreed. They thanked Brad and headed for the door. Outside, the truck had stopped near the gas pumps. The driver was just climbing down from the cab. Male, middle-aged, looked normal enough, but something made Sarah pause. The way he moved. Too fluid. Too many joints bending in places where joints should not bend. The driver approached the station entrance. As he got closer, Sarah could see his face. Perfectly normal features, except for the eyes. Those empty, predator eyes she had seen in the dashcam footage. Evening, the driver said as he passed them. His voice was pleasant. Normal. but Sarah noticed he cast no shadow under the bright parking lot lights. She grabbed Marcus's arm. "Move, now." They ran for their cars. Behind them, Sarah could hear the driver entering the gas station. She could hear Brad greeting him pleasantly. Sarah started her engine and backed out of the parking space. In her headlights, she could see the truck driver through the station windows. He was standing at the counter, talking to Brad, but his head was facing the wrong direction. Sarah floored the accelerator. Her phone rang as she reached the highway. She ignored it. It kept ringing. Finally, she answered. "Thanks for stopping," said Brad's voice. But Brad was back at the gas station. She had just left him there. "No problem, buddy. Where are you headed?" Another voice now. The truck driver from the parking lot. "South. That works. Climb on up." The same conversation. Always the same conversation. But now it included new voices. Brad's voice. The truck driver's voice. Each new person they encountered became part of the recording. Sarah realized with growing horror that the thing was learning. Each interaction gave it new voices to use. New people to mimic. Her radio crackled despite being destroyed. "Evening, officers. Everything all right up here?" The trucker from the scenic overlook. "Detective Chen, are you feeling all right?" The state police dispatcher. "Rough night?" Brad from the gas station. All the voices mixed together now. A chorus of everyone she had spoken to tonight. But underneath them all, that quiet, pleasant laughter. The road ahead curved through dense forest. Sarah's headlights seemed dimmer now. The darkness pressed closer. In her rearview mirror, she could see Marcus following, but his headlights also seemed to be fading. Her phone buzzed. Text message. "Thanks for stopping." She threw the phone into the back seat, but the text kept coming anyway. She could hear the notification sounds even though the phone was no longer in reach. "Buzz. No problem, buddy. Where are you headed?" "Buzz. South. Buzz. That works. Climb on up." The entire conversation, replaying in text form. But now it included fragments from all her interactions tonight. "Buzz. Detective Chen. Buzz. We need to leave. Now. Buzz. Thanks for stopping." Always back to that. The beginning of the loop. The moment Tommy Briggs made his fatal mistake, Sarah rounded a curve and saw something that made her heart stop. A figure stood beside the road. Thumb extended. Standard hitchhiker pose. Male. Caucasian. Maybe 30 years old. Wearing a gray hoodie that looked new. Clean. The exact same figure from Tommy's dashcam footage. Sarah slammed on the brakes. Behind her, Marcus did the same. They sat in their cars, engines idling, staring at the impossible figure on the shoulder. The hitchhiker didn't move. Didn't look at them. Just stood there with his thumb out, patient as death. Sarah's phone rang. She answered without thinking. "Thanks for stopping," said her own voice. But she hadn't said anything. She was still sitting in her car, 50 feet from the hitchhiker. "No problem, buddy. Where are you headed?" Marcus's voice now. But Marcus was behind her, also still in his car. "South." The hitchhiker's voice coming through her phone. But the figure on the roadside still hadn't moved, still hadn't spoken. Sarah understood then. The thing didn't need them to pick it up. It had enough voices now. Enough conversations. It could play out the entire scenario without their participation. "That works. Climb on up." Tommy's voice. Then the screaming started. All the voices at once. Tommy screaming. Carl screaming. Voices she didn't recognize screaming. An entire chorus of terror coming through her phone. And underneath it all, that quiet, pleasant laughter. The hitchhiker finally turned to look at them. Slowly, deliberately, his head rotated 90 degrees. 100, 120. But this time, it didn't stop. 150, 180, 200. The head kept turning. A full rotation. Then another. The neck twisted like rope. But nothing broke. Nothing tore. The hitchhiker's face spun past them again and again. Each time it came around, the smile was wider, the teeth sharper, the eyes emptier. Sarah put the car in reverse, backed away from the figure. But in her rearview mirror, she saw another hitchhiker standing behind them. Same person, same gray hoodie, same impossible smile. Marcus was trapped too. Hitchhikers had appeared in front of and behind both their cars. 4 figures total, all identical, all smiling those terrible smiles. Sarah's phone was still connected to the call. Through the speaker, she could hear new voices now. Her own voice, Marcus's voice, both of them screaming. But they hadn't screamed yet. She realized the thing was playing conversations that hadn't happened yet. Future conversations. Future screaming. The hitchhiker in front of her car began to walk forward. Each step covered impossible distance. Like the space between them was contracting with every movement. Sarah floored the accelerator, aimed directly for the figure, but as her car passed through the spot where the hitchhiker stood, there was nothing there. Empty air. In her rearview mirror, she watched the figure reappear behind her. Still walking, still smiling, she grabbed her radio microphone, forgetting it had been destroyed. But somehow it was there again. Whole, functional. Dispatch, this is Detective Chen. Emergency situation on Highway 129. Multiple officers in distress. Need immediate backup. Static answered her. Then Tommy. This voice. Thanks for stopping. Sarah threw the microphone down. It landed on the passenger seat and immediately started talking. No problem, buddy. Where are you headed? South. That works. Climb on up. The conversation continued without her input. The microphone speaking in Tommy's voice. The radio responding in the hitchhiker's voice. But now other voices were joining in. Carl Hendricks, the truck driver from the gas station. Brad the clerk. Thanks for stopping. All of them saying it. A chorus of gratitude from the dead and missing. Sarah's car reached the bottom of the mountain. The lights of Gatlinburg spread out before her. Civilization. Safety. Normal people living normal lives. But as she approached the city limits, every electronic sign began to display the same message. Thanks for stopping. Street lights flickered in sequence, spelling out words. No problem, buddy. Where are you headed? Even the traffic lights were part of it now. Red lights flashing. South. Green lights responding. That works. Climb on up. Sarah's phone, radio, and every electronic device in the city were now part of the same conversation. The same loop, playing endlessly. She pulled into a 24-hour diner parking lot. Ran inside. The place was full of truckers and late-night diners. Normal people, but as soon as she entered, every cell phone in the restaurant started ringing. Every person answered their phone at the exact same time. Thanks for stopping, they all said in unison. Then they hung up and went back to their meals as if nothing had happened. Sarah backed toward the door. Outside, Marcus was approaching the diner. But something was wrong with his walk. Too fluid, too many joints bending in places where joints should not bend. He smiled at her through the window. Too many teeth, too sharp. Thanks for stopping, he said in his own voice. But his lips didn't move. Sarah ran for her car. Behind her, she could hear the diner door opening. Footsteps following her, multiple sets of footsteps. She looked back once and saw them all. Marcus, the truckers from inside, the waitress, even some of the customers. All walking with that impossible gait. All smiling those terrible smiles. Sarah reached her car and locked the doors. Started the engine. The radio came to life immediately. Thanks for stopping. Now it was her own voice speaking. Her own words joining the eternal loop. She drove through Gatlinburg at desperate speed. Every electronic sign, every phone, every radio, all part of the same conversation now. The thing had infected the entire communication network, fed on every voice it encountered, grown stronger with each new addition to its collection. Sarah's phone rang one last time. She answered, knowing she shouldn't, but unable to stop herself. Detective Chen, came her own voice. Thanks for stopping, replied the pleasant, normal voice of the hitchhiker. Then silence, long, horrible silence. When the voice spoke again, it was different, layered, hundreds of voices speaking as one. They've been waiting for you. Sarah. It knew her name. It knew everything about her now. They've seen our work. You understand what we are. What do you want? Nothing complicated. We just need rides. South. Always south. Why south? Warmer weather. More highways. More truckers who stop for hitchhikers. Sarah realized the scope of what she was hearing. This thing wasn't limited to the Smoky Mountains. It was spreading, using the highway system like veins, infecting new areas, new victims. How many of you are there? We are one. We are many. We are everyone who ever stopped to help. The missing truckers are with us now. Part of us. Their voices join our chorus. Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. What happened to their bodies? Bodies are temporary things. Voices last forever. The line went dead. Sarah drove in silence for the next hour. No radio, no phone calls, no text messages. The thing seemed to have lost interest in her. But she knew it was still out there, still hitchhiking on dark mountain roads, still collecting voices for its endless conversation. She reached the interstate as dawn broke over the mountains. Behind her, the Smoky Mountains faded into morning mist. Ahead, the highway stretched south toward Atlanta, toward warmer weather, more traffic, more truckers who might stop for hitchhikers. Sarah pulled over at a truck stop just outside the national park. She needed to warn someone. Anyone, but who would believe her? She approached a trucker who was checking his load. Middle-aged man with kind eyes. The type who would stop for a hitchhiker without hesitation. "Excuse me," Sarah said, showing her badge. "I need to warn you about something." The trucker looked up from his chains and tie-downs. "What is that, officer?" "Done to pick up any hitchhikers on these mountain roads." "Not tonight. Not until further notice." The trucker frowned. "Someone dangerous out there?" Sarah wanted to tell him everything. The dashcam footage, the impossible anatomy, the voices playing on endless loop. But how could she explain something that defied explanation? "Just trust me," she said. "Promise me you won." "Do you stop for anyone?" The trucker nodded seriously. "You got it, officer. I'll spread the word." He climbed into his cab and drove away. Sarah watched his taillights disappear down the interstate. She hoped he would keep his promise. She hoped he would stay safe. But she knew that somewhere out there, on some dark stretch of highway, a pleasant voice would eventually say, "Thanks for stopping." And someone would answer, "No problem, buddy. Where are you headed?" And the conversation would begin again. Sarah got back in her car and drove home through the morning light. She would file a report, submit the evidence, try to make someone in authority understand the threat. But she knew how it would end. The brass would want rational explanations for irrational events. They would blame stress, fatigue, too many late nights working difficult cases. The dashcam footage would disappear into some evidence locker. The missing truckers would become cold cases. Life would go on until the next time, because the thing was still out there, still learning, still growing, collecting new voices for its impossible chorus. Sarah's phone buzzed one final time. Text message from an unknown number. "Thanks for stopping." She turned off the phone and threw it in her desk drawer. But she could still hear the notification sound, faint but persistent, like the thing was calling to her from inside the locked drawer. She left the phone there and went home. That night, she dreamed of highways stretching endlessly through dark mountains, of thumbs extended beside empty roads, of heads turning in directions heads were never meant to turn. And somewhere in the dream, a pleasant voice kept saying, "Thanks for stopping." Always polite, always grateful, always hungry for the next conversation.